UTN, founded by Dr. Paul and Vincent, preacher, teacher, and prolific author of the popular Persistence Works book series, broadcasting the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ from El Paso, Texas to the world, and bringing you into God's presence. Experience the difference. You'll never be the same. Don't just watch TV, watch Persistence Works Television Network, PWTN.
Hello, everybody. God bless you. This is another day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Hey, this is a special edition of our program, Global Politics. Today, we are focusing on Rwanda. I'm your host, as always, Bishop Paul Vincent, and you are watching Persistent Works TV Network. We are streaming on 15 different platforms. We are streaming on Roku, on Fire TV, on Apple TV. Of course, we are streaming on our own Persistent Works TV Network, and we are streaming on our two apps, our Android app, our iPhone app. We are streaming on also our website, persistentworks.tv. We are also streaming on all the leading social media platforms, YouTube, our two Facebook pages, Twitter, LinkedIn, and everything in between. So wherever you are watching us from, I welcome you to this edition of Global Politics, focusing on Rwanda. We're going to have a great time. So this program is a program we designed, put together to be able to, of course, global politics, to discuss politics and leadership in nations of the world. So what we do is that every week we focus on a particular city, nation, or state, and we do a research on them. We put together videos and we tell the story. Many times we do get government officials as well to be able to talk with them. And by the way, if you're watching this and you will want us to do a story on your city, on your state, on your country, and you want us to interview, president, the governor, ministers, and whatever position you have in government, but you want us to focus on your city, on your nation, hey, reach out to us, because we want to use this platform to tell the story, especially success stories. We are more interested in success stories of cases that were once upon a time written off. Once upon a time, nobody thought there was any chance, and they made a comeback. They became a success story that people can look up to, nations can look up to. There are many such stories, nations, cities, states that have gone through the worst of experiences and made a comeback. Last week we did a story. We focused on Singapore. If you missed it, I want to encourage you, go back and watch it. If you go to our app, if you go to our TV platforms, TV network platforms, Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, it's on the video on demand. You can watch it on our social media platforms. You can watch them also. As you scroll through, you will see them. Now, today, we want to talk about Rwanda. So Rwanda is one of those success stories today. But once upon a time, it was one of the worst cases in human history. In 1994, Rwanda experienced a genocide, one tribe, against the other, and in 100 days, over 1 million people were killed in what has become a genocide, the worst of its kind in all of 20th century. And you would think that a nation that went through that kind of experience and war and all of that, you would think that there will be no hope for them. But today, Rwanda has made a comeback despite all the pain, wars, killing, genocide, and everything that they went through as a nation. They've been able to make a comeback. Today is one of the success stories. And I'm not just going to tell the story. We've put together some videos to tell the story. But one of the things that I want to remind us or call our attention to is this. When you see a nation that has come through the worst of experiences, that has come through failure, that has come through setback, even worse, that is because, as I always said, there is a leadership. The leadership is always, everything rises and falls on leadership. The leadership is always to take the credit when something good happens. Likewise, leadership takes the discredit, so to speak, whenever things go wrong. So it does seem as the leadership of Paul Kagame has provided, even though he's one of those leaders that have been there for a long time, and some of us, we wish that leaders would just get out every 4 years or every 5 years or 7 years. But you see, many times you need to factor in a lot of things. There are situations in countries, what works for one country may not work for the other. So most times countries need to figure out and factor in what works best for them. While it's always best to go let somebody else come in, but most times you also see that there are cases where people kind of like prefer to have the leader because it's a democratic case and he was elected. Now, the popularity of the leader is one thing. If whether the election is rigged is another thing. But if it's a clear case of the people want the leader because of what is done and the constitution allows it, or there have been whatever changes or so in the constitution to allow for a continuation of in office, that his stay becomes legitimate, then that is what the people want. As one African leader once said, he said, ours is a homegrown democracy. So there isn't any one democracy is not kind of like one style or pattern fits all. Nations often have to figure what works for them. So be that as it may, but the thing is that looking at history, and we are not saying that he's been perfect or everything he's done is right, but given the circumstances in which he even came to power, and also once a military leader, and in fact, he himself went into exile as a kid. His parents took him into exile to Uganda as a kid. And for many years, he even joined the military in Uganda, even rose in the ranks, and yet he's not from Rwanda, he's not from Uganda. And of course, many years later, he came back. Now, we're going to tell all of that story. But the truth is that it takes leadership for a country to come out of the brinks to begin to record some of the best figures that even the World Bank, the UN, and other world bodies even not only recognize, now wanting to do business with, both their GDP, both the every index that you use to measure progress or success as a developing nation, and to see that, okay, they have made so much progress. It takes leadership, and that is one of the things we focus on in this program. We want to challenge leaders, especially African countries. Actually, Rwanda has been regarded as one of the best African nations, one of the best success stories so far, which is why we are doing a story on Rwanda. So I'm going to get more into it and talk more about it, but I want to give you a kind of picture, a full picture of what the case was like in Rwanda, what they've been through, what they've come through, and what it is like today. And we'll give you, an objective perspective in these videos we put together. So don't go away. You're watching Persistent Works TV network, and we are streaming on 15 different platforms on our Roku channel, on Fire TV, Apple TV, on our two apps, our Android app, our iPhone app. We're also streaming on our website, persistentworks.tv. And also, we are streaming on all the leading social media platforms on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. So wherever you're watching from, and hey, if you're in Uganda watching this, help us share this, help us get the word out. Let more people watch this and be blessed and be inspired. And leaders, political leaders especially, we want to use this to encourage and to challenge you to provide quality leadership, the kind of leadership that will bring a turnaround to your country, so that other part of the world can be proud to say, wow, look at that turnaround. So today we are focusing on Rwanda, and I want to play you this video that we've put together. Watch it, and I'll be back for us to continue with this discussion about Rwanda as a nation and what they've accomplished, what they've been through, the worst of cases, including the genocide that saw over 1 million dead, and also what they've become today and what prospects they have as a nation. So don't go away.
Watching Persistence Works Television Network, PWTN.
In 1994, Rwanda was in the midst of one of the worst genocides in African history. In 100 days, 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutu people had perished in a government-planned extermination. With millions more fleeing from the violence, Rwanda had lost 30% of its entire population. Life expectancy in the country was just 21.9 years. Its already small economy stopped functioning, infrastructure was completely destroyed, and any semblance of a social fabric ceased to exist. Rwanda was a failed state by every conceivable definition. It had become the closest you can get to hell on earth. Today, however, a startling border exists to the north of Lake Kivu. On one side, there are slums chaotically strewn about. Almost no homes have running water or access to electricity. Violent crime and poverty are and have been endemic. For decades, armed rebel groups constantly threaten the livelihoods of those that live there. To get into the country, you'll be forced to pay a bribe, and you'll have to pay even more to leave. Yet just a few meters to the east, across the border, it's almost as if you're on a different planet. Not all streets are tarmacked, but they are astoundingly clean. Drivers follow the speed limit, and police officers never ask for bribes. Economic opportunities permeate the city, and it shows in their neatly built, sturdy homes. Healthcare is cheap and universal, and the homicide rate is even lower than in the United States. But what may surprise you is that this side is Rwanda. Despite what happened in 1994, despite it lacking substantial natural resources, and despite it being the most land-scarce nation on the continent, what has happened in Rwanda in the last 30 years is nothing short of a miracle. By almost every metric, from life expectancy, infant mortality, GDP per capita, violent crime, poverty rates, educational enrollment, and more have substantially improved, while almost all other nations in the region have stagnated or even worsened. But how has Rwanda become so much better off in such a short period of time? And is Rwanda's ongoing economic miracle just too good to be true? It's speculated that in the 1500s, the Tutsi people migrated from the Horn of Africa. These Tutsi, along with their cattle, which was the primary source of wealth in the region, slowly came to militarily and economically dominate the area. By the 1700s, the Tutsi, who only made up about 15% of the population, had established a highly militarized and centralized kingdom, and the vast percentage of wealth, power, and resources started to accumulate to the minority Tutsi population. Eventually, the kingdom was colonized by first the Germans and then the Belgians after the First World War. Seeing as directly ruling over a colony in the heart of Africa was expensive, the Belgians decided to ally themselves with the existing Tutsi-dominated power structure. The Tutsis would retain their privileged position in society in return for funneling resources from the Hutu to the Belgians. Along with forcing the population to carry identification cards marked Hutu, Tutsi, or Twa, the Belgians had exacerbated the power gap between the groups, and this led to a rapidly growing resentment against the privileged Tutsis. The Hutus, by contrast, were relegated to heavy taxes and forced unpaid labor. Wanting to make the colony more profitable, the Belgians also introduced coffee, which quickly came to dominate the economy and led to even harsher treatment of the Hutus. But this structure didn't last long. Out of fear that the Hutus, with their vastly superior numbers, would eventually rise up in rebellion, the Belgians started a transition toward favoring the majority Hutu. This transition, along with the death and possible assassination of the king and centuries of oppression at the hands of the Tutsi, allowed for a massive rise in anti-Tutsi violence. The first wave of violence came in 1959, in which an estimated 150,000 Tutsis fled Rwanda to neighboring countries. The rise in Hutu power, along with anti-colonial sentiments, culminated in independence in 1962. With Hutus now in control, they reversed the system, now institutionalizing discrimination against the Tutsi, and occasionally carrying out systematic violence against them. Over decades, millions of Tutsi refugees would flee the country. Despite this, Rwanda would experience sustained economic growth due to generous amounts of external aid, favorable trade deals, and most importantly, a large rise in international coffee prices. With this economic growth came rapid population growth. Rwanda was already the most densely populated African nation, and therefore land became ever more scarce, which was a major problem since most of the population only ate what they grew on their individual plots of land. And like most nations that become too reliant on a single export, the plunge in coffee prices in the late 80s sent shockwaves across the Rwandan economy. To make matters even worse, Rwanda's agricultural land was starting to show signs of heavy deterioration due to excess cultivation. If that was not enough, a significant drought occurred in 1988 and 1989. Rwanda had too many mouths to feed, their farmlands had become unproductive, and because of low coffee prices, the government did not have the resources to step in and help. That government, which by now was a totalitarian one-party state that had grown ever more tyrannical, corrupt, and inefficient, started to use the Tutsis as a scapegoat to their mounting issues. One of Paul Kagame's earliest memories was him and his family narrowly escaping death during one of the outbreaks of violence against the Tutsis. They would successfully flee Rwanda, living amongst hundreds of thousands of other refugees in southern Uganda. While there, Kagame rose the ranks of the military, eventually becoming a senior officer before helping to overthrow the Ugandan government in a military coup. He would go on to join and eventually lead the Rwandan Patriotic Front, or RPF, which was a militant global network of Tutsi refugees who had the goal of returning back to their country. The RPF was a streamlined, highly competent, and experienced fighting force. The deteriorating situation in Rwanda and the sustained human rights abuses against the Tutsis provided the perfect timing to launch their plans. In October 1990, they invaded Rwanda. While initially successful, a prolonged stalemate eventually led to a shaky peace settlement in 1993. This came to an end when a private jet carrying the president of Rwanda was shot down in April 1994. What happened next can only be described as hell on earth. In the years prior, the Rwandan government had secretly been arming militant groups and locating all Tutsi households, during which vicious anti-Tutsi propaganda had been broadcasting with increasing frequency. The government had been planning for an extermination of the Tutsi population, and the downing of the president's plane was the catalyst for it to commence. Over the next 100 days, 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were murdered. Instantly, Kagame and the RPF resumed their fighting, and the killings did not cease until they captured the capital of Kigali. When the RPF took control of Rwanda, it was hardly a nation. 77% of all Tutsis were gone, the rest were forever traumatized. Millions of Hutus fled in fear the RPF would take revenge. In sum total, Rwanda had lost approximately a third of its entire population. Nearly all infrastructure was destroyed. The economy was barely producing much of anything.
On the April 6, 1994, they all woke up to a loud sound, only to discover that the plane which the president was on was shot down.
The experts concluded that the missile was fired by extremist Hutus.
Anarchy took over the system. The Hutus were killing the Tutsis.
Home of 250,000 people.
And in over 100 days, over 1 million people lost their lives right here in Rwanda. I mean, look at this.
They just discriminate, and they were saying that Tutsis are like cockroaches. They are not human beings.
The Belgians used the Tutsis to run the country. Then when they left the power to the Hutus. And of course, the Hutus took revenge on the elite Tutsis for years of repression.
This used to be our national ID or identity card. It used to show you your names, where you are coming from, stuff like that. This time we didn't have this. We used to be Rwandans. After genocide, the government come and then try to build the country, trying to bring the justice together, trying to unite all the Rwandans and show them there is no race, everyone is a Rwandan, and then they build the country as you can see right now.
26 years after the genocide, Kigali has worked so hard to reinvent itself. Over 100 hotels, including the big names like the Marriott, the Radisson Blu, and the Hilton, but arguably the best known is the Hotel de Mille Collines.
It was at this hotel where over 2,000 people came to seek, refuge because the Hutus kept killing the Tutsis. So a lot of people ran here because it's a French-owned company, so they seek comfort right here in the hotel. So over the years, this hotel has now, become an icon right here in Rwanda.
The story inspired the film Hotel Rwanda. 26 years later, this hotel has been rebranded to meet international standards.
The government put a heavy focus on infrastructure to spur growth, including the building of road networks to connect the country, constructing large hydropower plants to finally bring electricity to households and industries, and critically, they invested in Kigali Airport. With Rwanda being landlocked, it was crucial that it enhanced its connection to the world through air travel and Rwanda's transportation costs, making exports much more competitive. As a result, and in conjunction with a concerted effort to transform the productivity of the agricultural sector, profits and thus wages have improved for the poorest in the nation, who disproportionately work in agriculture. However, Rwanda has gotten quite lucky in that the price for their most important export, coffee, has substantially increased since 2001. But Rwanda did not want to be reliant on the coffee industry forever. In order to diversify in more profitable markets, Rwanda has made major progress in increasing how attractive it is to foreign investment. Since 1994, tariffs on exports were slashed, taxes reduced, and the process to start a new business or operate in the country has been streamlined. Unnecessary regulations were done away with. and laws regarding enforcing business contracts were strengthened. Rwanda improved its business environment so much that according to the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, Rwanda was the most improved nation in the world, moving from 142nd place in 2008 to 29th in 2019. This ranks it second in Africa and even ahead of more advanced economies like Japan, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. This in turn has spurred a huge rise in foreign investment, from just $8 million in 2005 to $366 million in 2018. This foreign investment, combined with Rwanda becoming much safer, contributed to a substantial increase in growth in all sectors, but specifically in tourism, which today has become the primary source of foreign capital. The revenue generated from tourism has increased from $27 million in 2000 to $635 million in 2019. The service sector, which includes tourism along with banking, retail, hotels, transportation, communication, and other basic services, has been the fastest growing sector, helping to diversify the economy and bring higher paying jobs. Yet one of the most debated pieces of Rwanda's economic development has been the establishment of state-owned enterprise. Crystal Ventures, the RPF's holding company, has a huge hold on the economy. They have investments from telecommunications, milk processing, road building, fancy coffee shops, and luxury estate. Horizon is another large holding company that is controlled by the Ministry of Defense that works in logistics and construction. Proponents argue these companies help to funnel resources into longer-term projects, acting as an icebreaker to markets that the private sector and foreign investors shy away from. This included the successful establishment of a mobile phone network in 1998 that many thought was impossible. However, critics argue these companies get preferential government contracts that prop up loss-making ventures and inefficiencies. But the real problem is the intersection of commercial and political power in finding the right time to allow the private sector to take over. These large conglomerates have been useful in making business where no business was to be found. However, it appears they are increasingly becoming obsolete, economically inefficient, and potentially politically dangerous in the future. Nevertheless, they have been important to Rwanda's development thus far. The focus on increasing human capital, investing in infrastructure, and making Rwanda an attractive destination for foreign capital has resulted in some astounding results. Since 2000, Rwanda has averaged a GDP growth of over 8%, representing a five-fold increase in total economic output, making it one of the fastest growing economies in the world. The average Rwandan is much healthier, richer, and educated than ever before. The nation is no longer food insecure, and citizens no longer need to worry about violence and crime. But it's not all perfect. Despite its growth, Rwanda is still a poor nation.
Rwanda is often referred to as the land on 1,000 hills. It's a landlocked country in East Africa. The western part of the country is dominated by mountains, and the eastern is being defined by forests, savannas, plains, and swamps. Lake Kivu makes up a significant part of Rwanda's western borders. The roads are really small and curvy. Traveling through Rwanda, you would never run out of views. I was stunned on how a country can be this beautiful. Nice weather prevails, making the country a pleasant spot to call home. Tourism is growing rapidly thanks to the country's natural beauty, endangered animals, and good leadership. The government of Rwanda is investing so much in its tourism sector and creating a massive buzz with its Visit Rwanda campaign. Today, tourism in Rwanda is the largest foreign exchange earner and has generated over 90,000 jobs so far. The Arsenal Football Club partnership is one of the many ways the government of Rwanda is positioning the destination into the hearts and minds of prospective visitors. A deal costing them more than $41.4 million US. One of the most interesting and popular attractions in the Nyungwe forest is the Nyungwe Canopy Walk. There are many islands scattered across Lake Kivu, One I found very interesting is named Napoleon Island because it is shaped in the form of Napoleon Hill's heart.
In less than a lifetime, Rwanda has gone from an impoverished state riven with violence to one of Africa's safest and most prosperous economies. Its streets are clean, violent crime is down, business is booming, and the GDP has grown 15-fold since 1994. Exports have increased by roughly 70%, and the trade deficit has dropped by nearly a third. Official data also shows that the number of tourists has doubled, and the country has played host to several high-profile global summits and marquee events. Now, Rwanda's leadership intends to usher in an economic revolution by mimicking Singapore's success. Good times are ahead. Rwanda is to become a hotspot for tourism, innovation, and business. Yet, not everything is as it seems. Questions remain about the country's fundamentals. And while Asia has its tigers, Africa, it seems, is close to finding its lion. Known as the land of 1,000 hills, Rwanda is a tiny, landlocked state in East Africa, roughly the size of Albania. Wedged between Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, its subtropical highland climate protected it from the ravages of malaria, the tsetse fly, and historically European colonization. Over time, it developed into an agrarian, semi-feudal kingdom where economic and social status centered around cattle ownership. Those with cattle, loosely known as the Tutsi, could lend their draft animals in exchange for service. But those without cattle, known as the Hutu, had to work the land for subsistence. Ergo, the divisions within the Rwandan society were already in place when the Europeans showed up. Belgium, as a result, had no trouble engineering divide and rule. Ethnic Tutsis were integrated into the colonial apparatus. Collaborators enjoyed rewards, including status, wealth, and education. In turn, colonial administrators extracted taxes, raw materials, and cheap labor, primarily from the ethnic Hutu underclass. This not-so-subtle disconnection led to a radical Hutu consciousness that persisted following independence in 1962. The advent of Rwanda's current Tutsi leader, Paul Kagame, came out of the resulting crisis. It didn't last though. A coup ushered in a Hutu dictatorship in 1973. Kagame tried to return to power, but French intervention prevented him from doing so. After back-and-forth negotiations, a power-sharing deal was settled. This arrangement, however, only lasted until the Hutu president was assassinated in April 1994. Thereafter, with French assistance and intelligence, Hutu militias waged an annihilation campaign against their countrymen, who happened to be Tutsi. In just 3 months, roughly 1/10 of Rwanda's population, mostly with machetes, rifles, and blunt instruments, Kagame was able to stop the onslaught by staging yet another intervention. And after becoming Rwanda's effective leader, he was tasked with rebuilding a shattered nation and repairing ethnic divisions. Yet the path forward was not immediately obvious. Unusually for Africa, Rwanda has scant mineral wealth. Thus, economic reform required extensive planning to move away from agricultural dependence. To this end, in the year 2000, the government established Vision 2020, a 2-decade economic development strategy that sought the effective distribution of scarce resources and the cultivation of favorable investment climate. Chiefly, the plan sought to establish an effective rule of law. This would eliminate graft and corruption, introduce regulatory coherence, and minimize political unpredictability and risk. The policy seemingly paid off. Since 1994, Rwanda has experienced steady economic growth, with its GDP climbing from $753 million to $11 billion, with a comparable rise in per capita figures. Corruption is also remarkably low by African standards, and the homicide rate is half that of the United States. Meanwhile, according to government statistics, nearly 1 million Rwandans have been lifted from poverty. These metrics show incredible progress for a nation just one generation removed from a brutal mass killing. But Rwanda isn't done yet. Kagame's government has big plans ahead. In laying the ideological groundwork for Rwanda's development, officials have drawn extensively from the case of Singapore under the leadership of Lee Kuan Yew. This includes leveraging capital inflows and GDP growth to improve infrastructures, healthcare, education, and utilities. In theory, this generates a feedback loop, drawing in more investment. The economy is also boosted by foreign aid to the tune of $1.3 billion annually, accounting for 2/5 of the country's budget. As such, Rwanda scores well on measures that track business friendliness, including registering businesses and assets, gaining construction permits, access to electricity, contract enforcement, credit availability, and insolvency resolution procedures. In addition to infrastructure and utilities, Kagame wants to steer foreign investments into the technology sector. The plan is to move away from subsistence agriculture and move towards advanced, ecologically sustainable farming to raise export revenue. Other developments are afoot in informatics, communication technologies, artificial intelligence, and data collection. For instance, Rwanda has joined with Japan's space agency to launch meteorological satellites and has used drone technology to deliver blood samples to rural communities. Most important for national prestige, though, is the modernization and expansion of the national carrier Rwanda Air, a policy that mimics the success of Singapore Airlines. Rwanda's copy and paste policy tends to emphasize looks over substance. But in politics, the image one projects is the image others perceive. For example, the cleanliness and safety of Rwanda's capital, Kigali, has allowed it to draw marquee events like the FIFA Congress and the Commonwealth Summit. These PR events have not only kept Rwanda in the news for positive reasons, but they have also helped to overcome its checkered reputation that is bequeathed by history. But there is more substance than meets the eye. Singapore is not Kagame's only influence. Following China's lead, Rwanda established special economic zones in its capital, with some key investors being Chinese firms. Clothes, sanitary products, and intermediate goods are now being produced on the Rwandan soil. Meanwhile, Rwandan farmers are gaining access to yield-boosting technologies. In essence, Beijing is sounding out Kigali as a possible trade and logistics hub for its African commerce. But though the development of the local industry is welcome, some Rwandans are upset that not enough opportunities are being thrown their way. The actual level of dissent is hard to assess, however. Despite its economic gains, or perhaps as a precondition for them, Rwanda has minimal political opposition. The last election in 2017 showed a 99% approval for the ruling leader. The legislature acts as an effective rubber stamp, and civil liberties are sharply undermined, so much so that the constitution was actually amended in 2015 to allow Kagame to bypass term limits. Still, despite his democratic shortcomings, Kagame has done a remarkable job in improving the country all around. And while his approval rate may not reach the official numbers, it no doubt exists to a substantial degree. And so long as the world wants to be misled, it will find politicians willing to oblige. Even so, while Kagame has learned lessons from Singapore, there are clear geographic differences that complicate direct comparisons. For starters, Rwanda is landlocked, while Singapore is an island. The latter's port facilities and location within the Malacca Strait make it a natural hub for the world commerce. Rwanda, by contrast, is subject to transport costs emanating from its inland position and highland geography. And no matter how much it pursues a favorable investment climate at home, it is still subject to the policies and whims of the surrounding countries that connect it to the outside world. Over time, this may lead Kigali to adopt a more service-based economy by bolstering its communications and internet infrastructure, thereby eliminating the physical geographic barriers that stand in its way. In this, it may be more sensible to lift a page from the landlocked Switzerland's book than Singapore's. But regardless of which success story to follow, Rwanda faces a second complication, one that is literally beyond its control. All trade and investment hubs are somewhat parasitic on the surrounding economies. Singapore can draw sustenance from the surrounding Asian giants, just as Switzerland can from Europe. Rwanda, by contrast, is surrounded by landlocked, unstable, and underdeveloped states. It's hard to do business in such an environment, even if your own house is in order. The final issue in Rwanda's roadmap to prosperity lies in the numbers, specifically believing the official statistics. The methods and classification techniques used to measure progress in the country have shifted dramatically during the presidency of Kagame, so it stands to reason that the official numbers are no more honest than the political polls. Minimal data from outside agencies exist, and that which does paint a mixed picture. For instance, the United Nations Development Programme rates Rwanda's living standards below average for sub-Saharan Africa. Meanwhile, the World Bank claims 2/5 of Rwandans are still in poverty. So, whatever one thinks of Kagame's leadership, few would dispute that further improvements are necessary. All things considered, Rwanda's economic turnaround has seen clear progress, but the path forward is not entirely clear, and the Singapore model, while useful, is no blueprint for a landlocked state like Rwanda. Much will depend on the leadership of Paul Kagame and how well his authority endures as his country's profile increases. For now, though, Kagame's leadership is secure, as his stature shields him from criticism, because image is everything in politics.
Rwanda's economic miracle has come at a risk. Since 2000, Kagame has ruled the nation with an iron fist. While this style of governing was a necessity to bring Rwanda back from ruins, today it appears to be risking its very future. There is still ethnic tension, which may be building up to dangerous levels due to the government's efforts to stifle free speech and political freedom. Over the last 20 years, Rwandans have put up with the lack of political freedom because the government has provided security and rapid development. Should this fail to continue, the nation could erupt into violence once again. While Rwanda appears poised to be a middle-income country in 2035 and possibly even a rich country in 2050, its real test will come when it eventually experiences life after Kagame. The totalitarian nature of the government could easily be used to enrich the elite at the expense of the people. Should someone less benevolent come into power, this surely will be the result. Rwanda's government should seek to pivot toward a style of governance like Botswana, which I have a video on, because democracy will ensure continued political stability. Yet this appears unlikely, because the Tutsis in charge are terrified of relinquishing power. Nevertheless, for the current moment, Rwanda appears to be one of the few African success stories.
You are watching Persistence Works Television Network, PWTN.
You are watching Global Politics. focus on Rwanda. So I hope you did enjoy and learn a few things a lot of things from the video we put together. You are watching Global Politics Focus on Rwanda here on Persistent Works TV network. We are streaming on 15 different platforms. On our PWTN platform, which is our Persistent Works TV network. We are streaming on Roku, on Fire TV, on Apple TV. We are streaming on our two apps, our Android app, our iPhone app. We are streaming on our website, persistentworks.tv. We are also streaming on our Android app, iPhone app, and all the leading social media platforms. So wherever you are watching us from, especially if you are watching us from Rwanda, I'm hoping that you are enjoying this. Back to our discussion. You see, we put together the video because I wanted to throw light on for those people, especially out there watching this. You have no idea where Rwanda is. You have no idea which nation it is and what they've been through. I would say it takes a miracle to go from genocide, where over 1 million people were slaughtered, were killed in the most brutal, forms, and the nation was torn apart by wars and all of that. To go from there to become one of the leading nations in Africa and, of course, in the world, fastest growing nation, the economy, the GDP, by every metrics you use to measure a successful country, Rwanda have become just that, to the point that it has attracted so much foreign investment, visitors, tourists. Tourists wouldn't go to a place there is no security, there's no, guarantee for safety of lives and properties. So we will say Rwanda has done a great job. The leadership of Paul Kagame has done a great job. And if you remember the story we did on the focus we did on Singapore last week, this is like the African version of Singapore, where, like one of the videos said, even though they had a copy and paste, in copying what the secret of Singapore's success, the principles, the things that made Singapore to be a success, despite the fact that they had no resources, I think they did a good job in doing that. But one thing, like one of the videos said, one thing about difference between Singapore and Rwanda, Rwanda is a country on an island. I mean, it's an island, so they have the advantage of being right by the curve of the major transit where shipping around the world, they are right strategically positioned where they can make a living of having a shipping port and all of that. And that has worked to the advantage. On the other hand, Rwanda is a landlocked country. So all the nations surrounding it, in most cases, have been unstable. And in other cases, their policies may not have been as successful as they are. So they, to a great extent, we have to learn to grow or develop their economy to be a bit different, away from the exact way Singapore had it. But the other example that they could follow, which one of the video pointed out, is Switzerland. And one of these days, we're also going to do a video on Switzerland, and we're going to focus on Switzerland. I've been there. I was in Switzerland, I think, in 2019, and Switzerland is another very beautiful country and also have come a long way, but they are landlocked. You see, what I love is when nations turn what should have been a disadvantage. For instance, you have no natural resource like Singapore, like Rwanda. You have a lot of things against you, yet leadership, a good leadership will turn around those. So you don't give excuse as to what you don't have for the reason of as a reason to fail. When you see the disadvantages, what you don't have as a nation, as a city, as a state, you look at what you could make out of what your current situation, and you make the most of it. So leadership, which is why I keep saying that everything boils down to leadership. You have the right leadership, it picks a country that has no resource, that has nothing to write home about, even its people may be down, written out by everybody, yet turn it around in a couple of years. But without the right leadership, even though you have the best of natural resources, like many countries with some great natural resources have been so plagued by, failures, economic failures, and violence, and all kind of issues because of leadership. And many times also, those leadership have to be selfless. They have to consider what is best for the country. When you're putting in place policies as a leader, as government officials, as politicians, you see, And I don't always like to call politicians leaders because many politicians are not just leaders. But in case where a politician is a leader, now leaders always want to put in place policies that will be best for their people, that will benefit the nation, not their own interests. But many times we see a case where many developing countries, especially in Africa, many of their leaders always factor in what benefits them and their cronies and their friends, and whatever policy they put in place, whatever they try to do, the nation's interest is always at the backyard. It's not on the forefront. But a good leader will factor in what works best for your nation. What policy do I put in place, or do we put in place, that will help this nation move forward? Like I talk about visionary leadership, and the story of Rwanda is a case of visionary leadership. How do you move a country from surviving genocide, surviving war, and be able to 20 years down the road make it a destination where everybody around the world wants to visit? How is that possible? Visionary leadership. Because when the leadership is visionary, you are able to strategically plan and project, and have the political will to execute the plan on paper. Many African countries, often the problem is not just to plan. And I know some cases and some African countries, I wouldn't want to mention names, but I know some African countries, they are good on the paper, on the policy, they plan it. You look at it, you say, wow, this is great. But check 10, 20, 25 years later, there was no political will to implement what's on paper. There are many things that they have on paper in those nations, yet they didn't have the political will to execute, to implement it. Why? Because somebody in power feels, oh, this won't favor me, or this won't favor my tribe, or this won't favor my people. And so, they only want to do what favors them while they are in office, or maybe they are thinking about the next election. Oh, if I put this in place, this policy in place, I may not win the next election. It won't favor me in the next election. And they want to just, recycle themselves, return back to power. But one of the best ways to leave a legacy is what you do in office that benefits the state, the people, the masses, not just for your own interest. Because legacy, history will be kind to leaders who, even with all the imperfections, you could see that they have put in place policies, they have provided visionary leadership and moved the nation to enviable height. And I believe the leadership of Paul Kagame, with all the whatever flaws, whatever mistake you may think he has made, and I'm not a fan of many African leaders, especially when you talk of sit-tight leaders who maybe wants to remain there forever. But in this case, whereby he's been able to, lead the country to this point of success, I will give credit to him, and I will say, yeah, this is one of the best success stories that we've had, Africa has had. And one piece of advice I will also want to give to the leadership of the country, Paul Kagame. Now, I don't know when the next tenure will be up, and I don't know if he plans to run for another election, but my advice, my suggestion will be, hey, follow the example of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was in jail for 27 years because of the cause he fought for, and he got out, eventually became the president, and he did not want to say, okay, you know what, I suffered for 27 years, therefore I'm going to be president for 27 years. He didn't. He left the stage. There's an English saying that a good actor leaves the stage when the ovation is loudest. So as African leaders, when you are at the peak of your performance, when everybody is saying, oh, it's great, the economy is great, the GDP, everything is going well, your policies have worked out well, that is the best time to leave. And so the next upcoming election, I don't know when that will be, but I would suggest that Paul Kagame now begin to plan a transition to the next generation of leader who will carry out and implement the same policies he has put in place over the last couple of years, so that even when he's not there, he will be able to witness the transition and continuity. There's a need for continuity in government, you see, when you have put in place all the best policies you want. And that's one problem with African leaders. African nations, in many cases, the next leader comes and wipes away everything, including the good things that have worked. You don't wipe away things that have worked because they are not your party or he's just from the other side of the house. No. Things that are working, you continue them, and you may make changes and implement new policies, but you don't, just because you don't like the face of the last leader, you wipe out everything that he has done, even the things that are successful, and then you have a case of 5 years forward, 20 years backwards. There are policies that could put the nation 20 years backwards. I know that for sure in Nigeria. Many of the cases I followed them. I'm from there originally. Many of the policies of some previous administrations, a new one comes up and wipes out those ones and start again. And all of a sudden they discover, oh, this was working. We shouldn't have done away with it. But the damage has been done. Businesses have fled, investments have fled. And before you work out to get those investor confidence again, it's not going to happen just overnight. So it's always important for leaders to learn to build upon the success, the past success of their predecessors. And also, it's also good for leaders to, even when you are succeeding, even when everything seems to be going well as it is now, to begin to plan your transition so that you are able to leave a memory where people say, he came, he saw, he conquered, and he was able to transition out, so that you don't end up like a case of some African leaders, I wouldn't want to mention name, that once upon a time we are successful, we are relevant, we are great. But listen, they were there forever. They overstayed their welcome to the point where they have now become, bad news, so to speak, both locally and internationally. And that is a bad case. Africa shouldn't be repeating cases of Zimbabwe under Mugabe, cases of Cameroon under Paul Biya, because these are leaders who, even though once upon a time maybe they did great, but then they want to be there forever. But listen, nobody is going to be king or president forever. Only God is the King of kings, King of the ages, forever and ever. No matter how much you want to remain in power, no matter how great you are doing, someday you will leave. So to plan that transition when the ovation is still loudest is the wise thing to do. So that would be my piece of advice to Paul Kagame, considering the success so far, to begin to plan a transition so that he doesn't have to try to be there forever, but to witness and to see the transition to the next generation of those leaders who will continue, visionary leaders who will continue from where he stopped. But so far, we want to give credit to the leadership, the visionary leadership of Paul Kagame, and also the entire administration there in Rwanda, because it's not something that you find all the time, that a nation goes through what they've gone through and have become one of the best success stories. So that is it for now. I want to use this to also challenge other African leaders and other leaders in Asia, wherever you're watching us, including in North America, in Europe. Many times we can learn examples of success stories. And this is one of those success stories we need to learn from. Leaders need to learn from. And also, I believe they learn from success stories like Singapore, for instance. If you missed my video on Singapore, go watch it, because you will be inspired, you will be blessed by it. And I want to thank God for few cases we have that are success stories. There are not many success stories for nations that were on the brink of destruction, of war, of genocide, that made a comeback. So, if you are also a politician, a government leader, maybe a president of a nation, governor, mayor, whatever it is, senator, congressman, I want us to do a video on a story on your city, maybe to interview you. Hey, reach out to us. This program, Global Politics, focus on whatever nation or city we focus on. The aim is to do a story on cities and nations and get to interview, and hopefully we are going to soon get an official from the Rwanda government to get to interview them, very soon. And before that, I want to encourage, if you want us to do a story on your nation and your city, please reach out to us, and we are going to be able to, do a balanced coverage and interview and get to hear your side of the story as a government official, so that your story can inspire others, challenge others, and help our world become a better place. Well, thank you so much for your time. That's all for today. And if you're watching us, please help me share this video, especially if you're watching us on social media. Help us share this video. Let it be a blessing to others. Let it be an inspiration. If you know leaders that need to watch this, please help share this. Encourage them to watch this. Global Politics comes to you on Persistent Works TV network every Wednesday, 10 p.m., 2 p.m. Our mountain time, which is 4 p.m. New York time, and also about 10 p.m. West African time, Nigerian time, and UK time. That will be 9 p.m. So wherever you're watching from around the world, I want to thank you so much for your time. And we'll be coming your way again next week with another edition of another interesting country we want to explore. We want to look at the secret of their success, their challenges, and also to interview and talk with the government officials. Let me also remind you to join me every day, Monday to Friday, our Persistent Works online prayer, our 1 hour prophetic online prayer, powerful prophetic online prayer. We do have teachings as well, teaching from the Word of God. Join me every day, Monday to Friday, on Persistent Works TV Network. We stream on all the leading social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, everything. Where Twitter is now X. And also we stream on our Persistent Works TV Network platform on Roku, on Fire TV, on Apple TV. So I want to thank you so much for that. Join me every week on Tuesday as I discuss my books, Persistent Works book series. We talk about each book every week. I have 20 inspirational books. 5 more are coming later, within the next 1 year. So watch out for it. And on Wednesday, we have global politics. On Thursday, every Thursday, I do interview guests, successful businessmen, men of God, people who have accomplished a lot. And we talk with them, glean from them to learn the secret of their success and how they came this far. And you want to glean from their wisdom, their experience. So join me every Thursday for Persistent Works Moment. And every Friday, we celebrate our birthday. So, hey, if you have your birthday coming up and you want us to help celebrate your birthday here on Persistent Works TV Network, reach out to us. We want to celebrate your birthday. We have 3 different packages you can choose from. So when you celebrate, you can have some American VIP celebrities sing and sing your celebrate and wish you happy birthday. We will have a TV interview with you here on our TV network to talk about your journey of life, your birthday, things you've accomplished, your plans, and all that. And also, we'll do a flyer celebrating and announcing your interview on our network. So reach out to us. We want to celebrate your birthday on your birthday. It's your birthday on Persistent Works TV Network. That's every Friday. Wow, praise God. So, well, that's it for today. Until I come your way again, you've been watching Global Politics, Focus on Rwanda. And hey, if you're watching us from Rwanda, hey, let us have a feedback. Let's know how you enjoy this broadcast. And if you're watching us anywhere around Africa, especially, or around the world, let's know how this program bless you, how you were inspired, encouraged, and what have you. And if you also have suggestions of countries you want us to focus on, let's know as well. Well, that is it for now. So thank you so much once again for your time. You've been watching Global Politics, Focus on Rwanda, and I've been your host, Bishop Paul Vincent. So until I see you again next week, next time we come your way, remember, persistence works. But listen, don't go away. I have some announcement coming your way.
We hope you've been blessed by today's TV broadcast. Join us again for our next TV broadcast. If you have a testimony of how you've been blessed, please let us know. Send us an email at persistenceworkstv@yahoo.com. Please support our TV network with your donation to help us reach the nations with the gospel. You can give through PayPal, Zelle, Cash App, or online at www.persistenceworks.tv. You can make your checks payable to Vincent Paul Ministries International at 11829 Gwen Evans Lane, El Paso, Texas 79936, USA. Attention, pastors and bishops. If you want to air your church or ministry program on Persistence Works TV network, or you want to promote your product or services, contact us today. Send us an email at persistenceworkstv@yahoo.com. Download our Persistence Works TV network app in the App Store or Google Play Store. Also, add us and watch us on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. Read our Persistence Works magazine and enjoy great content. Simply visit the settings page of our Persistence Works TV network app. Click on the button to read the electronic edition of the magazine. To order the print, ebook, or audiobook editions of our Persistence Works book series, visit the settings page of our Persistence Works TV network app. Follow Bishop Colonel Paul Vincent across his social media platforms: Facebook, X, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Truth Social. For more information about PWTN, visit www.persistenceworks.tv.
inspiration and motivation to reach your dreams in life? Are you trying to overcome discouragement? Do you desire a deeper spiritual walk with God? Do you question your destiny? Then the Persistence Works book series by the prolific author and international speaker Dr. Vincent N. Paul is written for you and is now available in paperback, audiobook, and ebook. Order today by calling 866-909-2665 or go online, persistenceworks.com.
If you need that salvation, if you need that forgiveness, you can receive it tonight. Shout hallelujah!
The anointing breaks the yoke. Hear Dr. Paul and Vincent preach the anointed word of God that changes lives and brings salvation, healing, and deliverance. Invite him to minister in your church, conference, or crusade. Also read his life-changing books in the Persistent Works series. For more information about inviting Dr. Vincent to minister or to order his books, visit VincentPaulMinistriesInternational.com.
Dr. Paul N. Vincent, internationally known author and preacher, invites you to his annual Persistence Works Holy Land Tour in October and April. These memorable trips throughout Israel include visiting historical sites in Jerusalem, Nazareth, and Bethlehem, as well as the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, and many more. Your travel package includes round-trip airfare from Houston, Texas, and Lagos, Nigeria to Tel Aviv, first-class hotels, 2 meals a day, air-conditioned buses, and Israeli Ministry of Tourism approved English-speaking guides. For more and to register, visit VincentPaulTours.com today.
For more information about PWTN, visit www.persistenceworks.tv.